Testing. All I wanna do is test things. I could test things and then stress things. Or I could do a little less things. All right, testing. Happy Easter to those of you who celebrate these in particular holidays. I'm jumping directly into these ground control Featherlight 4 frames. There is a almost 30-minute video that is going to follow this portion, but I felt it very necessary that I got back out there on my skates and actually skated these ground control Featherlight 4 frames before I released the video so that I can give you the most honest and in-depth review possible. First and foremost, these frames retail for approximately $80. The H-blocks are $25. They come in both plastic and I think aluminum. What I will say is that they are not your Featherlight frames, right? Featherlight frames are feather light. They're extremely light. These frames are not extremely light. In terms of weight, so I took the liberty of measuring things like volume. I think I have the density, the weight of all of the axles and bolts combined, the maximum wheel size, the length, width, and height of the frames, the H-block, the thickness of the frame walls, the length of the walls, the wheel spacing from center line to center line, the space between the channels, and even the thickness of the H-block, right? So meaning, how low can you go, so to speak, right? How far can you grind? No pun intended for Ludacris's hip hop song, but I really wanted to get to know the product that I was riding and how it compared to things like the ground control mega frames, the ground control big frames, right? So I tried all of those frames and I was not pleased. I have also tried the Seba aggressive inline skate frames, which I was genuinely pleased with. But again, all of these products have something give or take. They have something give or take that is better than the other. And I don't want to use the term worse than the other. I think each product has a comparable part or feature that is more marketable, or maybe it suits your needs, maybe it suits your type of skating or your obstacle, or your maybe you skate certain types of obstacles where you need that product, right? So the one thing I can say about these frames, again, when compared to the bigs and the megas, I feel like the wheel bite protection and the design is a better overall design than both the megas and the big frames. When compared to frames like, I think the what's that company? Kaiser. I think Kaiser has like level 3 frames and things of that nature, which are not really designed for doing grinds. They're just designed for rolling on big wheels. But then they have step down versions of those that are designed for grinding. I think those frames still are in a different category, and they're strictly designed for big wheel rolling with minimal grinding, right? When I say minimal grinding, I mean they're really only allow you to do grinding on the edges, on the soles, but very little grinding on the backslide and torque slide plates. These frames do come in 3 sizes. There's small, medium, and large. I am using the large frame that fits on my 10.5 to 11 shell. When I do ride a smaller shell, like a carbon shell, sometimes I can, carbon shell, or even a Razor, what shell is that? A Razor, jeez, I just had them. These are the shifts. The other ones are the Razor SLs, the super lights. So the Razor Superlights, I can often squeeze into an 8-9 shell with like a 10.5 liner. On those frames, I ride the smaller frame. Irregardless of the size of the frame that I'm wearing, I find that when you first put something like this on that's brand new, even if it were the megas or the bigs, there is a learning curve that comes with each of these products, right? And that learning curve sometimes could be several hours worth of skating a rough or relatively rough ledge. And I say that because you have to break in the groove no matter what. The other aspect is wearing down the wheel. So I started riding these brand new with 60 millimeter flat, and I was getting caught and stuck on a lot of things. At the moment right now, almost almost after, so I've started, I want to say overall about 6 to 7 months of active skating. These wheels are now worn down to approximately 57, 58 millimeter, right? And because of that, and because of the actual wear and tear on them, I have much less wheel bite than I did within, let's say, the first 2 weeks of skating these frames. So, my initial reaction when I started skating these was, fuck these frames, they suck, I keep getting stuck. But as I started getting used to the skate, right, that learning curve, as I started breaking in the frames and breaking in the wheels, wearing down the wheels, getting used to the boot itself, right, because this was a brand new boot for me. And that's another topic that I think is worth mentioning. Oftentimes, if you're starting fresh with a brand new skate, brand new frame, brand new wheels, you're going to have to adapt and learn to adjust to the brand new skate, the brand new frame, the brand new wheels. My practice over the years has been to try to stick with one boot, one skate, one shell, so that I don't have such a sharp learning curve where I'm struggling to get used to the skate, and instead, all I'm getting used to are the frames, right? Because the wheels I'm used to already. I'm used to riding, let's say, 60 millimeters flat, yada yada, right, so to speak. But essentially, this product took me a lot longer to get used to and comfortable with because I'm riding it brand new. So these are all things that you should consider if you're picking up a product for the first time and you're not familiar with any of them, right? If you're not familiar with riding flat, if you're not familiar with riding an H block that is, if we're looking at it this way, an H block that is lower to the ground, so to speak, right? Giving you more height on the grindable surface, then you should do your due diligence and take it easy. I have a lot of information on the frames in terms of the mathematics, some of which I don't know that it's going to be necessarily helpful. One thing that I noted between a lot of products like Ground Control, even the Caltic Ilia Savosing frames, the Able frames, which are no longer in production, and Create Originals, and a few other products, the one thing that I can say about volume is that almost all of these frames, in terms of plastic volume and density, they're almost all exactly the same, with a very low fractional difference, right? So low that I could barely measure it with my rudimentary tools and systems. I'll say that the maximum wheel size, though it is 60 millimeters marketed, you can actually go larger if you were so inclined to Dremel and reduce the plastic on the boot down. And I think you can get as big as 64 depending on the boot that you have or the DIY setup that you have. The wheel well width I thought was a very interesting concept, right? And to me, that the wheel well width, right, if I just take a caliper quickly just to demonstrate what I'm referring to here, the wheel well width is this distance, right? The distance in between, the distance where the wheel should fit and sit. And I find some products, I don't want to necessarily point the finger, but I want to say Create Originals may have one of the narrowest wheel well widths. And I say that because this frame to me, if you're considering all the good, the bad, and the ugly, is a frame that just works well. It works in almost all aspects of the product. Yes, there's a bit of a break-in time, but because of that break-in time, you actually have a longer life on the skate, on the frame, right? Meaning that it takes you longer to break these in and get used to them, but once they're broken in, I find that these are, just my opinion, I feel that these will last you a lot longer. And then even if you do wear these H blocks out or wear some of the sides out, as I'm noticing, it does not have as much wear and tear the way the original Featherlights 1s, 2s, and 3s do. I feel like these are going to outperform, outlast, and be more durable than most of the other previous Ground Control products. And then the plus is that you get to change the H block, right? So now we're talking about the wheel well width because I think that plays into the main factor of putting in your wheels, right? So to me, I think of iPhones and I think of Apple products and user friendliness, and that's one of the reasons Apple products to me sells more than a lot of other things, is because of that user friendliness. You can pick it up, take it out of the box, and you're not struggling with basics. You're not struggling with things that you shouldn't be struggling with, right? So to have the sickle-shaped bolt on one side and then a regular hex bolt on the other means I only need one hand at any given time with a tool to remove my wheels. And I think when you have to use two tools, let's not, not to badmouth or downplay any other product, it's just as a comparison. But with a Create Original frame, I am often struggling not just to insert my wheels, not just to remove the wheels, but I'm also struggling with two L keys, two hex keys, just to get a wheel on and or off. And after a while, it's a nightmare. However, the frame is amazing, but we're here to talk about ground control. So the wheel well width, I think, is something very interesting and noteworthy, as well as, sometimes just the torsion, right? When you take these wheels out, does the frame bend inward and collapse on itself? Can I bend it outward? I find that's another issue I run into with Create Original frames that I do not run into with this product. The plastic depth is interesting. I measured approximately 11 millimeters of depth. And let's say I compare it to Torq'n'Tricks, I got about 8 millimeters of depth. And what's another product? Do I have the Create Original product here? I don't think I was able to measure the Create Original, I'm not sure why, but what I'm referring to is the depth from this point of the plastic to the inside. So the question I ask myself is, how much wear and tear do I have to grind on these frames before there's a hole in the middle of this H block, right? And that measurement came out to approximately 11 millimeters. And that's why I could speak so confidently and say, these are gonna last a lot longer than most products that exist out there. You're gonna wear these down and wear them down and still have more H block to go because you're talking 11 millimeters, right? I don't know if I can show you exactly what that looks like. 11 millimeters is essentially, it's basically one more above a centimeter, right? So you're talking something of that nature. That's essentially the thickness of your, if that makes sense, that's the thickness of your H block. So you have 11 millimeters of plastic to wear through before you're going to see through your H block. The frame walls are relatively thick. I think they're about 9 millimeters. The channel distance, the wheel basing, the wheel spacing. What I will say about these frames, right, going back to weight and the feather lights, what do I have here for weight? What's the overall weight? Weight. Okay, 252, 242. These frames are not light by any means, so they still carry the feather light marketing and designation, but they are not light in comparison to all of the other products out there. Create Original frames are, so these are coming in at approximately, without the axles, without any hardware on them whatsoever, just the H block. They're coming in at about, for the large size, they're coming in at about 252 grams, and on the smallest size, they're coming in at about 242. So they're about 242 to 252 grams, whereas a Create Original frame is no more than 200 grams. Complete, like total, like not total, but not with the parts, but in general, like the largest frame, like the smallest frame is about 190, and the largest frame, I want to say it's no more than 200 grams. The Torq'n'Tricks frame is approximately 235 grams. Again, this is without hardware. And to just give you some context, the Able Blood Money frames, those are approximately 293 grams. So those are almost 300 grams. The Create Original frames are within the 200 gram range, and these are within the 240 to 260 gram range, to give you an idea of their weight. I don't have actual feather lights, but I can only imagine that the feather lights are closer in weight or even less than the Create Original. So to call these 4 flat or feather light 4 frames, I think is a little bit contradictory. They're definitely not the lightest frame on the market, and they're definitely no longer, to me, in my opinion, within that feather light realm, right? Because a Create Original frame is lighter than this by approximately 50, give or take 50 grams. What else did I think was noteworthy? I think overall, let's see here, we have the overall length of this frame, and the large size is about 300 millimeters, whereas the small size is approximately 278. When compared to a Create Original, it's almost, it's only a fraction of a few millimeters off. So it's about the same as their small and their large size. The Torq'n'Tricks frame comes in on a large Torq'n'Tricks frame, you're getting approximately 288 millimeters in length. So a large Torq'n'Tricks frame is smaller by almost 12 millimeters than the large ground control frame. Keep in mind that almost all of the other products, again, this is game theory and marketing, some products have one feature or not, or basically products have features and others don't, but it doesn't mean one's better than the other. It's just marketing, it's game theory, it's branding, we have one feature that they don't have. Ground Control, for example, is a bigger company. They have 3 sizes, right? So they can afford to do more. Whereas I believe Torq'n'Tricks and Create Originals together only have 2 frame sizes. So they have a lot less room to play with design and engineering. But that is my thoughts on the frames. I think they are a decent frame. It's been a really fun experience getting used to riding flat. It's also been even more fun getting used to the H block. I would love to take this out and try a new H block to see if I have to go through that entire learning curve process again. But I'll leave you guys for now, and you can check the full video review that is going to play after this, and just some food for thought about Adonis and how I operate. I often see things, products, I should just say that I question everything in life, and I question them so that I could develop an understanding, right? So that I could develop knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of the issues and questions that I have, and so that I can develop my own opinions. And the key here is that it's my opinion. Yes, I am using some facts, but when two products that are competing are not directly competitive per se, right? You cannot really compare apples to oranges. They're both fruits, but one is an apple and one is an orange. They might have a similar size, weight, shape. They might have similar taste. They might have acidic acid, but they're not going to be identical. And I say that so that you all go out there and do your research and treat every product with a little grain of salt, and be diligent and do your due diligence so that you can figure out what works best for you. Because I find that these do work well for me, but I think any product can work well for you if you understand how the product was designed, and if you understand what is available on the market, and if you also understand what it is that you want out of life and what you want out of skate. So that being said, I just love to fucking test things. I don't care what it is. I really don't care what it is. It could be products. It really could be anything. But I'll leave you guys now. Enjoy the video.
Pull the core out of the reactor.
Nuclear bomb, nuclear bomb, nuclear bomb.
Yes, the fire rises.
Exceeded by 1,000 times the explosive force of any weapon ever made before.
What's my motivation? Testing and action. What is good? Hopefully the audio and the echo is not too bad. Maybe I can repair it later on. I am Ado. I am in the Bronx, New York, and I'm here to talk about Ground Control 4 FLT, also known as the Featherlight 4 frames. They are a flat frame. I did a lot of research on other frames. I've been looking forward to these frames for a very long time. What else? So I think first and foremost, I think too often these companies, I think in rollerblading and aggressive inline roller skating, a lot of companies put effort into their products, marketing. They get the products out, and my experience in business that I think is neglected or maybe they just have a different viewpoint in the inline skating industry, and maybe they're doing very well. But I find customer retention is something that is highly overlooked within the aggressive inline roller skating industry. I don't have insight into other industries, so I can't speak on it, but I say that because working in commercial real estate management and architecture, for 20 plus years, that was one thing that we stressed, meaning we got a customer in the door, right? Our clients were property owners, building managers. Let's say we sold them a project to fix a drawing or to create documents for certain aspects of the building, or to help them lease, manage, rent, sell it, buy it, whatever. Once we did that, we tried to find other things to keep selling them and get them on subscription, so they stayed and stuck around and kept spending money with us, right? And for me, when I think of aggressive inline roller skating, and my experience since 2002, summer of 2002 when I started, to now 2024, I realized that products, yes, they do keep improving to an extent, but I find that a lot of products often get discontinued. Brands get discontinued, and you keep hearing this argument that there's no money, but I feel like that is the biggest lie in this industry, because if you have the power and you're on top, why would you tell people that there's, and you're doing well, making money, let's say raping the actual people who are the ones participating in the sport, practicing the sport, getting injured and risking their lives for the sport, for the so-called community. I feel like when you have that kind of dynamic, you're going to say, and you're the power structure at the top, and you're controlling the media, you're going to say there's no money in the industry when you're doing very well. And I think in any industry you go into, you'll find that people will often shun you if they see that you're trying to either one or the other step on their toes, or maybe generate income in another sense where it takes away from their profit margin or their bottom line. Same thing happened to aggressive inline when it came out, when it had the big boom surge, I think maybe 94, 95, those early 90 years.
95.
Same thing happened with regards to skateboarding, right? So rollerblading blew up, and then skateboarding was like, oh shit, you guys are jocking our shit. Fuck you faggots, so to speak, right? Or literally, I don't know. But that happened, and I feel like that keeps happening in society, in culture, in business. But I think with inline skating, the fact that they keep switching the products out, you lose customers, right? So I'm a diehard ground control fan from the Generation 2s. And while we're on that subject, I need that chair. No, I need that chair. I need that chair. Oops. Oh, jeez. All right. So, ground control for flat frames. Since we're on that subject of sales and marketing, business strategy, retention, and I feel like the companies on top, or the powers that be within the inline skating industry, I think they say and do certain things because they have a grip on it, and why would they care for anyone else? But I think the catch to me is that you lose a lot of people and you lose a lot of interest every time I think there's new products. Great that we get new participants and there's new growth and development, but I think having certain products that remain in a way basic, it's like imagine you buy Lay's, let's say you buy plain potato chips all your life. Or you buy, you know what I mean? Like, let's say you go to the store for soda pop, for Coca-Cola. That's what you want, and let's say all you can find is cherry Coke, vanilla Coke, lime Coke. It's like, after a while, you're gonna be like, I used to love regular Coke, now I can't get it, And I think oftentimes too, within our industry, it's very fickle, and it's often driven by, not by numbers, per se, not by actual statistical numbers of people who are actually spending the money on products and supporting the industry, but I feel like too often, at least in the past, it was driven by just people talking shit. People talking shit literally got away with murder, to the point where businesses started crumbling, or people lost sponsorships, or just bullshit like that. But anyways, I think, so to talk about these ground control 4 frames, I should stress that my mother used to ride the ground control Generation 2s. Like, these are not my mother's ground control, these are not her generation frames. These are the 4s, they're different. Yes, it has a removable H block. I'm getting a little angry, I'm getting a little upset, because not everybody does this. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody does this. What else? Back in the days, yes, Generation 2, yada, no, don't sleep. Don't sleep on these, right? Here's what I'm trying to show you. I also want to show you the wear and tear over time. I'm not a huge Featherlight fan. I'll be straight up. I've tried the Megas, I've skated tons of Featherlights, but I've always hated how like rickety rackety they kind of felt or sounded. Obviously they were super light, so that was a plus, but to me they just didn't feel like a skate that would like hold up to a lot of the pounding I would give the skate, right? But yeah, so this is a brand new pair versus a used pair. I've been skating the used pair. These I think came on the Jeff Howards or something. I dyed the bottom, but the reason I'm showing you these is so that you can see in a way how well they've kept up. And I think the cool thing about these frames is that you can change the H blocks. I don't have the aluminum H blocks with me, but that's also an option. These retail for about 25 bucks. The frames themselves retail for, I think, 80 bucks. What else is there? Yeah, so you have colorways, right? And I think it's pretty cool because to me, the old frames, my mother's old frames, these are not my mother's frames, right? My mother's old frames, what I did not like about the old Generation 2 ground controls with the removable H blocks is that you remove them, and when you put a brand new one in, you had a lot of issues where they meshed, and it almost was counterproductive to even buy a new H block. It was almost like just get a new frame altogether, right? But I feel like the way like whoever sat down in that lab or in that, you know, CAD office, that engineering department, the laborers and the communication back and forth between China or whatever European country or Germany or what is this, ground control, so probably Germany, Sunshine Distribution, whoever else is involved. Like, just the details that went into this frame, in my opinion, make it one of the most amazing designs. And I'm actually now, because of this, curious to see what's happening with the Icon skate that I've seen Montre riding around with. You know, that whole removable thing to me is pretty cool. I like having that option to customize, but what I love is that, I don't know how much you can see here. What I love is that I love just how like detailed it is on the inside, right? There's like a little rivet, like not rivet, but like it's just etched out perfectly, if that makes any sense. And hopefully I wasn't yelling in the camera, but it's funny because it fits, to me it fits seamlessly and snug in a way that the old types of like frames did not. And I can give you an example. I don't have an old ground control frame, but I do have an old Able. I think this was an Able, might have been the Generation 1. I don't know, this might have been the Generation 2 frame, but to give you an idea, you know, so like imagine you skated this frame here and you wore these all down. This would no longer sit, a new one would no longer sit comfortably. It would have a sort of discontinuation in the materials. One portion would be worn, and then the other portion would be brand new, and they would kind of sit lopsided. And they definitely figured out how to solve that issue, you know? So I think definitely big kudos to Ground Control for making this possible. And now I will jump into what I think about the frame itself. Again, I've been skating it since, I want to say June or July of last year. You know what, quick sidetrack here, and really not a sidetrack. This is just to give you an insight of the full product review, right? So this is what you're getting when you pick up this product. This is what the tag looks like. This is the bag. It's a thin, probably recycled kind of paper. I'm sure you can tear through it, or fabric, I should say. It has the branding and the size. You have, you know, white. I wrote in the color red, small, medium, and large. GC FLT for frame, FLT for Featherlight, right? There's a little sizing on the bottom of the bag. It's stitched down the middle, right? So the two are separated. However, I have ripped these very easily before. See, it's a very relatively cheap fabric, but it does come with a drawstring, right? So that's your ground control Feather Light 4 frame. These are your H blocks. This is one that has been worn down. And now I'm going to talk about the actual skate and the frame and how I thought it functioned. This frame is designed for 60 millimeters flat. However, you can easily fit up to, I want to say honestly, they don't advertise this, but I found that you can fit in some skates as much as 64. With the Howard shifts, I was only able to get up to, I think, maybe 62 or 63. Right now, this is a 60 millimeter wheel, ground control wheel. The 60 millimeter wheel that's on here right now is worn down to about 58, but off the rip, when I started skating these, I found that I was sitting higher off of the ledge and or rail that I was grinding, right? So if maybe I can just give you an example and say this is the obstacle, right? As you can see, where the H block is, the H block you're grinding here, and on most frames and most skates, think of this, so this frame is the ledge. On most frames, the ledge would be here. So you're a little bit closer to the obstacle, if that makes sense, right? I found that I got tripped up numerous times in the beginning breaking these frames in. I would say specifically I got tripped up on tricks like certain Unity and Savannah tricks. I got tripped up on, sometimes I got tripped up on just regular royales, regular back royales. Mostly ledges, however, I did get tripped up on some handrails and on certain types of angle line and other types of obstacles, sometimes even set sliding, until I kind of found my groove and found the balance point. And I think a lot of that was due to the fact that this is wide and shallow, right? And because it's shallow, you know, not like myself, but shallow in terms of depth, right? So I felt like too often what would happen is I'm grinding on the obstacle, right? So I'm coming down the obstacle, and as I'm grinding, I feel like I'm also swaying left and right, if that makes any sense. And you know, if you can just imagine the wheels are there, I'm grinding, and if I move a little this way, of course I'm gonna hit the wheel and get caught. Of course I'm gonna get caught, right? So, and not just that, but sometimes I found that even if I was tilted slightly at an angle, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, like a Sean Kelso torque, you know, some people do things with slightly angled feet. No one's ever really 100% perpendicular. Sometimes we're a little angled. So I found in those scenarios, I got tripped up, and I think the only reason that they are acceptable now is because it's been 6 months of skating relatively often, at least once, sometimes 3-4 times a week, hour at a time, you know, and a lot of it was straight practice skating because I've been in a lot of recovery, physically, mentally, and everything else. But yeah, so that's one issue. Top sides, I didn't find much of a problem. I want to say again, I did get tripped up on not the sides of the sole on top sides, but again, the front foot on top sides. Even I think top acid once or twice, I got clipped up where the wheel, right? Once again, the wheel hit the rail and it tripped me up. So I found that they were not the greatest for preventing wheel bite issues. I think they need to be broken in more. And what that basically says is that if you're going to break this in more, you're basically bringing it down to the level of a frame that does not have such a what's the word, shallow groove. I think shallow being this way, right, as in it's not very deep, that way. And then it's also raised, or in this situation, it's lowered, right? If we're talking, if we're talking anatomically head to toe, top to bottom, it's lowered and it's shallowed. It's shallow. So it's lower than, let's say this is the ledge. It's taller. Either way, you get the point. Anyway, ground control, Featherlight 4 frames. Yeah, these are just my thoughts on them, I think the other, big issue, this was fucking scary. Now that I think about it, this was fucking scary. When you're participating in a sports, whatever you want to call it, lifestyle, culture, recreation, pastime, that is inherently dangerous, it goes without saying that safety is paramount, And when you put on a product that it literally could be the last time you ever put it on again, I like to know that my parts work, that my cuff screws don't come loose, that the bearings are what they say they are, the wheels are the size they say they are. And from 2002 till now, I found over the years that many products have not been true to what they say they are. I was a little upset with skating until I explored other industries and realized that's life. And it's the craziest, saddest truth, but that is life to a T. You name it. I'm talking footwear, I'm talking headwear, head measurements, everyone wants to rule the world in their own way. So you end up having millions of pockets of communities and cultures that do things their own way, and it's one of the reasons we have metric and, and imperial, and then you get Mondo Point and this, and everyone's got different sizes. And I think what makes our community awesome and special, and I think this is some of the silver lining, is that we do have some consistency across our sport. Our sport has a language that is shared globally. I think in some small sections, or maybe in some areas, a trick might be referred to differently, but I think that's what makes it awesome. Ground control, Featherlight 4 frames, I think they've been on the market now for at least 2 years. They retail for $80. H blocks, I believe, retail for about $25. I'm having a lot of fun with them. I have a pair of Torq'n'Tricks frames that I need to review and test, so I'm probably gonna put these on hold. I'm also suffering from some sort of shoulder, maybe rotator cuff injury. So honestly, I haven't really skated since October. And I might not skate again for a while. I'm going into surgery, hopefully next month, for more urethral repair. All of that is from a 2018 injury. I really want to get a camera crew in that operating room. That would be amazing. And obviously get the recording of the procedure, because a lot of it is done with cameras. But ground control, 4 frames, yeah. And then obviously you have 2 screws that mount in the back. I should also note that ground control frames, they come with axles that allow you to only use one L key, where some frames do not, so that's a plus, right? Right, so this one here is the sickle, the old stoiky musique. Yeah, so the whole benefit of having this, the one-sided, well, this fits into a perfect groove, like a square block in a square hole. And then you have the screw on the other side, and then you just need one L key. I'm a big fan of these sonic tools, and you can do that. And if you have a drill, you can also use a drill. I would warn with power tools, not to say that you should wear eyewear just to do this, but most power tools are really powerful, and I've already, I think, almost hurt myself messing with this. The downside, I would say, to using power tools on such small hardware and skate bits and parts is that you risk stripping your screws, your bolts, your bits, and then they become, I would say almost, if not, they definitely become way more difficult to remove, even with power tools. Sometimes the existing equipment that exists, the things that exist don't do justice. And since we're on that topic, I'll show you guys two things that I've used in the past. This is for removing stripped screws. This one, you know, you'd be hard pressed to find if this product even existed, but this is the one that has worked the best for me. I can't even figure out how to get it to work these days because I have several stripped screws. And this one, in all honesty, none of these have worked the way they used to in the past. I'm not sure why. I'm wondering if maybe I just have forgotten how to use them properly, or maybe I've not been patient enough, but these are some examples of what to get if you're trying to remove stripped screws. Once again, yeah, man, it's not your mother's ground control, but yeah. Okay. I know I walked away there, but I forgot to mention another aspect, right? So I spoke about how the frames feel. Okay, so the sole, doing sole tricks felt good. Again, even sole tricks, sometimes I would get tripped up with the foot in the front because of the wheel bite issue. And I think part of that, you know, is not to blame the frame itself, but it's possibly big in part due to what I skated before. I generally always skate either flat or anti-rocker, but I don't think I have, but when I'm skating flat, I'm sorry, I should say I generally always skate anti-rocker when I'm grinding, and when I'm skating flat, it's usually big wheels. So I think around last year when I put these on for the first time, most of that skating was the first time I was using these skates, first time using the frames, first time using the wheels, first time with everything except for the liners. These are Tim Franken liners, by the way. These are My Fit Prime liner. But the point I'm making is that I forgot to really detail some of the issues I had with the H-blocks. And I think when you consider if you are familiar with the Ground Control 2, the old Ground Control Generation 2 frames, for some reason I had gotten really good at doing fast slide grinds, and my front sides were impeccable. They always were. I tried doing front sides on an average to slightly high rail in Brooklyn, and as I'm jumping on the rail to do the front side, the first thing I noticed that I think threw me off was, number one, that I had to jump higher than I'm used to, and that's because of this, you know, lowered H block, right? And the problem that I found when I jumped onto the trick, and I think that is in part due to how these H blocks are shaped, right? If you can see, is that I would jump on the trick front side, right? And you can see what's in the middle it's a relatively thin space. And if I show you the worn down frames, you'll see that this edge here and this edge here, they quickly disappear once you start breaking in the skates. But the point I'm making, and I think I should show it and illustrate it maybe by showing you here Create Originals. I feel as if the Create Original H block is a lot more, it's similar, it's closer in design in terms of the wide flat base that you have here. And I find this type of wide base makes doing tricks like front sides and fast slides, especially tricks like fast slides. I'm not too sure about pud slides, but I find that having it wider than, you know, broken into sections like this, because then this H block, the Ground Control 4 H block becomes more of a rounded H block, whereas this H block becomes plateaued and then the edges become rounded. So you always have a flat plateau, so to speak, that you can balance on. And I'm doing these front sides, and as I'm doing the front side tricks, what I noticed is that my foot would slip, right? So imagine I'm doing front side down the rail, and then my foot would slip this way. And it would not just slip out from under me, it would slip ahead of me. you know, or maybe I'm going forward this way and the back foot slips and goes back in the opposite direction. So I had to keep fighting, and my core strength at the time definitely wasn't that strong. So I couldn't skate very long because I kept slipping out of the trick. And I think that is another big issue, is that so on front side and grind tricks, sometimes you're slipping this way as you're grinding, right? You're kind of, your feet are slipping in both directions. That's the groove tricks issue. And then I think the other issue I had was not just slipping this way, but when I would sometimes rock back and forth doing grinds, you know? Sometimes I did find that the boot helped stabilize me, but I felt like if I had a skate, let's say like I had an old school Solomon skate without a backslide plate, I felt like this would be the worst frame to use on a skate that didn't have a proper groove or like backslide plate that you can stabilize and balance on. You know, if you kind of just freestyling on the frame, you have to rely solely on the frame, and I think the frame, it's designed very well, it's very slick, it's very fast. But I just felt like the design is it's counterintuitive to certain tricks, front side specifically, and then I think fast slides. But I do believe if you wear it down enough, if you grind this enough, you can build your own groove and you can do, you know, pretty much any trick. But yeah, that's my overall take on these frames. Yeah.
I'm the Brian Aragon of shit talking, clicks talking shit, but I will cut off your lips.